welcome to CBAD 301. We're going to discuss Chapter 8 that deals with strategy formulation and execution. And I want to start by just giving you a big picture overview. This is the strategic management process. And when we talk about strategy, there's really kind of two components that are married together in this. One is your business strategy and one is your marketing strategy. And they have to work together. So when we talk about business strategy, those are things like your mission, your vision, your goals, looking at how that follows through within the organization at the different business units or levels of the organization. And it also feeds into how you build your culture, the people that you bring on board, how you structure your hiring, how you structure your performance management systems, communication systems. So that's the business side of the strategy. And then on the marketing side, we really figure out like who our target market is. We figure out branding, how to deliver that message. And so the two of them kind of work together, and we use some various tools, and we're going to talk about some of those tools that we use to uncover the pieces that help us make those decisions. So strategy can be kind of a confusing topic, especially if you haven't spent a lot of time in management or in corporate, understanding the way that corporations kind of function, all the different moving pieces. But there's some simplicity to it that I want to point out. So if you can kind of grasp this, you can start to build upon that knowledge. So kind of one of the competing things that businesses, when you get out there, if you think about it, you can have low price, you can have a quality product, you can have quality service, and in the reflection, or not the reflection, but in your thought questions before working on Chapter 8, you were asked to identify the businesses that you kind of gravitate to and the people that you buy from, and kind of what it is that you value about that particular company that makes you go there. So these are kind of the three big chunks for businesses to look at, but you have to pick two of the three. And this is just a little card that I still have from years ago. This is a little training thing that we went to. And if you think about it, if you're going to offer quality service and a quality product, you're going to be paying more for the quality in the materials and more for the quality in the people to provide that. So trying to sell something at a low price is going to be very difficult to do. You're not going to have very good profit margins, and so unless you're running a nonprofit, the for-profit companies, the idea is to make the money. So having that low margin is not necessarily a good strategy to take. But if you think about quality service, and maybe we offset that by having a lower quality product so we can offer that low price, that's a good combination. So you want to think about businesses and just kind of like big strategy is looking at those three components. Part of what goes into that, and this is part of the marketing piece, is the value chain. And if you think about if you're going to offer a quality product, you have to be able to buy quality parts, quality that's the supply chain has to come, you have to be able to build that quality into it. So you have to think about who you're going to buy those parts from, or where you're going to get that service from to be able to build into that end product. And this is pick Starbucks because we work with Biz Cafe, and so it helps kind of carry the theme, but this is a little introduction to value chain.
A value chain is a series of activities that add value to a product during every step of production. A business has primary activities that relate directly to the creation of goods and services, and support activities that enhance efficiency. Starbucks is a good example of how these ideas can be successfully applied. Starbucks' primary activities begin with inbound logistics, which requires selecting the best coffee beans from producers in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. It operates more than 21,000 direct or licensed stores in 65 countries. It sells most of its products in its stores. It invests more in superior quality products and services than marketing, but supports new offerings through store samplings. Starbucks' support activities require its infrastructure departments to keep its stores operational. Generous benefits and incentives motivate its dedicated workers. Starbucks uses technology to connect to its customers. It offers unlimited Wi-Fi to turn stores into makeshift offices and accepts customer feedback and questions through digital platforms.
All right, so you can see that there's quite a bit that goes into the value chain so that it helps kind of mold and build and support the strategy that the company is trying to achieve. So there are these generic strategies. This gives us a look at 4. There's actually 5, and you'll see in the slides some of the details there. But you can kind of use these as a framework, and companies will kind of fall into this. Again, going back to, you can only have 2 of the 3. So are you going to take a cost leadership type strategy, a differentiation strategy, differentiation like focus, which is more of like a niche market, or cost focus, which is more of like a Costco, where they sell, quality, but they're looking for things that are of good value, so that cost focus. And so this gives you, and this will be in the PowerPoint, or you can pause it and read it, and we don't go that deep in this class. You will in your capstone, for those of you that are business majors, you'll have a whole course on this. But I want you to understand that there is a framework that exists that businesses can kind of follow, and through the trends that we see in business and how business works in competition, businesses can use this to, as a guide, so to speak. So we're going to watch a little video here. He gives a good understanding, explains it pretty well on a couple of different strategies, common strategies for us to look at.
Hey there, fellow marketers. Professor Walters here, and today we're here in Freiburg, Germany at the train station. And today we're going to talk about our competitive strategies that you might see businesses use out in the world today, okay? Now, there's 2 overall competitive strategies that I want to talk about. One is called a differentiation strategy, and the other one is a cost leadership strategy. And I'm going to give you an example of the trains here in Germany to explain those differences, okay? Now, if you have what's called a differentiation strategy, you're making your product different. You're making it special, so people are willing to spend more money to buy it. I mean, think about it. If you're here in Germany, you get that Mercedes. It's got the leather seats and a nice sound system and stuff like that, so you're willing to pay more money for it versus a Volkswagen, which has usually not as cool of a stereo, not as cool of a design, things like that, right? And so by being different, being special, you're driving people to want to buy more of your stuff. Also, you do this in order to kind of create loyal customers because they know, hey, if I get a Mercedes, it's going to be really cool because they're always really cool. So you have that kind of mentality when you're looking at this differentiation strategy. If you're looking at retail, this is kind of the strategy that a Target would do in the U.S., where they have really nice stores. That everyone's in the nice uniforms and the nice layouts and the nice products, the displays and stuff like that. Therefore, with all those extra costs, it means you're going to have to raise your prices anyway. But people kind of expect that because it's different, it's special. And the thing is the more you differentiate your products, the more likely it is that you can beat some competition in some area. Maybe it's in comfort, maybe it's in speed, maybe it's in other things. For example, here in Germany, there's multiple types of trains. And if you take the ICE, the Intercity Express, those you pay a lot more money for. Why? They're cleaner, they got comfier seats, they go like 100 kilometers an hour faster than the other trains, so you're going to get there a lot faster, a lot more comfort, and people are willing to pay the extra for that. So they have a differentiation strategy. Now the thing is, not everyone can be special and different, and not everyone can afford that kind of stuff. So what some companies do is what's called a cost leadership strategy. This is where you're going to be doing things cheaper in order to pass on that cheapness, those savings, onto your end customer. So here in Germany, Aldi is famous for its cheap prices. But you know, when you go into Aldi, you know, you're going to have to put your coin in for the wagon. You might have to bring your own bags. You're going to not have a ton of selection of all kinds of stuff, but it'll get you the basics at a super low price. And there's people that really value that. And so places like Aldi or Walmart really focus on that cost leadership. And the thing is, doing this cost leadership is not just about having low prices, it goes throughout your business. You have to think about it. What's our supply chain management going to be to help us lower prices or lower costs in general? What about our employment? Like, how do we hire people? Think about it. When you go to Walmart, aren't you always upset because there's never anybody at any of the lines to check you out? Exactly. Do you have fewer people there? Target, the line's a lot faster because they're paying more to give that different level of service to make it more special. And the thing is, you can have cheap stuff and you can have expensive stuff, and that's okay. And sometimes what you'll see is what we call a third kind of competitive strategy, and that's a focus strategy. That is when you focus just on one specific group, and you can have focus differentiation or you can have focus cost leadership. So a focus differentiation strategy would be kind of a high-end women's shoe company that only sells the fanciest kinds of shoes. So they're focusing just on shoes, just for women, so it's focused down, 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 but they're selling the really fancy ones, so it's being differentiated. Or you might see one that focuses on, they only sell cheap kids' clothes, right? So it's cheap for cost leadership, kids' clothes only, so it's focused down. So you'll see those things out there. And there's a lot of different stuff you can see out there. I know an old version of this video, I remember my oldest son had a Cookie Monster shoe. Okay, and the thing is if you get kids' shoes, you don't buy kids' clothes very expensive because they grow out of them. And the thing is, if you buy just a little tennis shoe for them, it's like $5 or $6. But if it gets a Cookie Monster label on there, oh, now it's like $20 to get that because it's different, it's special. Then your kids want to wear that Cookie Monster shoe versus not wearing shoes at all. Okay, so you have these kind of ideas, and the thing is, companies in general will usually choose one or the other. We're either going to do cost leadership or we're going to do differentiation because people kind of focus that way. You either go to Target or you go to Walmart. You go to Kaufhof or you go to, Aldi. You have this split because what happens is if you don't pick and you kind of get in the middle, that's where you can have problems. In the U.S., if you think of Sears and Kmart, they've had a lot of trouble. Most have gone out of business because they're not as fancy as like a Target, but they're not as cheap as a Walmart. So if I want to save money, I'm going to go to Walmart instead. If I want something special, I'll go to the Target instead of this. So that's where you have some issues. And the thing is the trains here, you have the fancy trains, the ICEs for differentiation. But for those of us that have a group of people and we're not going that far and time isn't that important to us, we can take the regional express trains, which are significantly slower and they stop at a lot more stops and it takes a lot more time. But I can get 5 of us to travel around for 50 euros versus one of us to have to pay 100 euros. I'm like, wow, 500 euros or 50 euros? You know what? I'm willing to sacrifice an hour of train time to save that kind of money. All right? So I hope this helps you know the difference between differentiation strategies and cost leadership strategies and the idea of that focus strategy as well.
The same Michael Porter that came up with the competitive strategies also has put together this framework that is Porter's 5 forces. And we've got a little video that walks you through this and helps you see it kind of a little bit through an airline's vision. And so you have to think about, where your power that your suppliers have. Are you a big buyer and you can kind of say what you think your price should be? Are you a little buyer and the supplier kind of determines that? And then also the threat of entry and threat of substitution comes into play, and that if we think about kind of some generic forms, so is the Walmart cola or some off-brand cola, is that the same thing as Coke? Is that the same thing as Pepsi? Are they interchangeable? And so are people more susceptible to purchase something that might be a little bit cheaper? And that gives a threat of competition there. Also new entry, if there's a new product that comes out or a new service that comes out, how likely is it that there's going to be a whole bunch of companies that are going to try to get a little piece of that? So we'll watch a little video clip that explains how this has an impact on business strategy.
Most people think of business competition as a tug of war between rivals, with each competing for more sales or market share. But according to Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter, competition is more complex than that. It's not about who's the biggest. It's about who is the most profitable. And profitability is defined by 5 competitive forces. Let's start with your buyers, or customers, who would always be happier to pay less and get more. In the airline industry, price competition is fierce because so many travelers just want the cheapest flight. Then, there are your suppliers, who'd ideally like to be paid more and deliver less. Powerful suppliers will use their clout to raise prices or insist on other more favorable terms. A third source of competition comes from substitute products or services that meet the same basic need you do. These aren't always obvious rivals. The toughest competitors may come from different industries. New entrants can also create tension. For instance, Southwest Airlines challenged the industry by flying just one kind of airplane, reducing costs and allowing it to offer better ticket deals. This pushed other carriers to spend more to retain their customers. Finally, you still have to fight your existing rivals, and intense competition reduces everyone's profitability. The major airlines have been in this position for years, forcing them to defend increasingly narrow profit margins, with fees for exit row upgrades, checked bags, even snacks. These 5 forces define every industry structure and shape your company's future. Once you understand them, you can make better predictions, create more competitive strategies, and increase your profits.
All right, the next piece that I want to look at are a couple of strategic tools that we can use. One is a SWOT analysis. The other one is a strategy map. And the SWOT analysis, there are probably several of you that have heard of this before. SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is a tool that companies use to evaluate their position in the market and determine where their opportunities and their threats are. So where are we currently and where can we go, and what issues might we run into. And so companies will do this analysis, and they'll come up with little pieces to put underneath here. So if we look at this little example for a coffee shop, this is, the strengths might be the high service levels, team-based culture, high quality products. So those are all things that make them a good, that makes people want to come, makes them highly competitive. And then if you look at their weaknesses, they have limited market share, difficult to generate publicity, limited sales area coverage. So these are all things that could potentially kind of wreck the business. All right. Then if we look at opportunities, we say, all right, well, where can the company go? What are, you take those strengths and how does that help us propel forward? So the opportunities here are that they can continue to develop that customer relationship culture. They can add more product line extensions, build brand awareness. So those are all things that they can do that are going to help, propel them. But then threats, the ability to meet cash flow requirements, that's probably based on the low brand awareness, difficult to generate publicity, limited market share, increase in supplier costs. So when we talk about those 5 forces, they can't necessarily, they're not in a position of power to tell the supplier, hey, look, we're not going to take the increased costs in coffee, but because they buy such a small amount. So as the prices are driven up, they're forced to pay those higher prices. And so this is what companies look at. They go through this analysis to try to figure out where they're currently at in the market and determine how they want to grow in the market. One of my favorite tools, and one that the book doesn't cover, is a strategic group map. And this is helpful when you are looking at entering a market or you're looking to expand in a market. So it helps you put your competition on a map, and you can see kind of where the holes are at, that the market is not currently being fulfilled in. So this goes back to, again, that very simplistic strategy of understanding, pick 2 of the 3. A lot of times you're going to see white space here because if you're evaluating price and quality, and here we've got price and performance, and then model variety. But anytime we're dealing with this part of the quadrant, no matter what comparison you're doing, there's going to be some white space down here. Now, how much white space depends on, what it is you're selling, how big of a target market you have, that kind of thing. But you can start to see where the white space is. You can say, we don't have a lot of low price, high quality, which we know would be difficult to attain based on that 2 of the 3. But it certainly is a place in the market that is open. So we'll use this as in an activity so that we can start to see an evaluation of our cafes and that competitive landscape. So I wanted to point that out to you here. Okay, one of the last tools that we'll take a look at here is the Boston Consulting Group matrix. And what it does is it kind of takes a look at a company. You can use this as a tool when you have an organization that has multiple divisions or products or services, and you can start to look at those business units and say, okay, who's making us money, who's not making us money, who has the potential to make us money, and who is potentially going to become an issue. And so there's a quick little video we're going to watch that explains this.
The Boston Consulting Group matrix is often used to determine where a business currently sits in relation to other businesses in regards to its market share and that market's growth. Where your businesses fall on this graph will make them a dog, cash cow, star, or question mark. Putting your different businesses into these categories gives a holistic picture and helps guide where best to invest. But how do we construct a BCG matrix? Well, let's take a look at how to plot it. The 2 axes are market share, which is the percentage of the market that the product serves, and market growth, which is how fast that market is currently growing. But what do the different quadrants mean? The dog quadrant means your business has a small share of a market, which has a small growth and follows the idiom, worked like a dog. It's difficult to argue for investing in something with minimal growth, and as a result, these businesses are often liquidated. Cash cows, on the other hand, are a much safer place for your business to be in. Having a large market share with small market growth usually means large returns for little investment, which means you can milk it for all it's worth. Stars are bright and shiny and on their way up. They can attract investment and help a business to gain or maintain a dominant position in a space of large market growth. Which leaves us with question marks. These products don't have significant market share, so generate little profit. But unlike dogs, they're in a high growth market. Which means with analysis and the right investment, question marks could become cash cows or even stars. While the BCG matrix's nomenclature isn't exactly orthodox, the graph helps visualize various companies' performances and offers a sound starting point for analysis.
Okay, the last of the toolbox, if you will, is, how do you deal with competition? And there, again, lots of research and the way that the market responds to certain things. And so this just gives you a little bit of an idea of some different strategies that you can use when you're competing with your rivals. So one of the, if you increase customization of product or service. So if you have shoes, maybe that you can get personalized. And so that increases that product differentiation, and the value tends to increase. And so it increases buyer switching costs, boosts total sales volume, often increases unit costs. So you kind of see, like, if we try this approach, this is what the effects are of that on our business. And so again, this is another framework that businesses will use when you're strategizing. Okay, we've got this new, this rival just came in, somebody else decided they're gonna try to compete with us, so what do we do? And so there's all these tools that are available to those businesses to try to figure out what strategy they're going to use to compete.